John Doyle. Friend of the show, been here quite a bit. Why everyone is fleeing to Texas? This is going to be about the whole California regulations and Elon Musk and all that good shit. So it should be some fun memes here with Doyle. So let's kick it off.
I like the Callan's going.
Hey, I might move to Texas. Callan and I and Shab have actually talked about this. Like
Getting a ranch together?
Well, if here's the thing, if California continues to be this restrictive,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good place to live. First of all, it's extremely expensive. The taxes here are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And if they really say that we can't do stand up until 20,
Do you realize that Texas is also referred to as taxes because they also have high taxes? You think that that's going to be better in Texas?
2022 or some shit like that. Like, I might jet.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Here's what he tweeted. He said, quote, "Frankly, this is the final straw. Tesla will now move its HQ and future programs to Texas, Nevada, where immediately, if we even retain the Fremont manufacturing activity at all, it will be dependent on how Tesla is treated in the future. Tesla is the last car maker left in CA in California."
John Doyle in. Heck off, commie.
Hello there, ladies and
You know, as much as shit as Doyle is, I still dig that fucking intro.
gentlemen. Welcome to Heck Off Commie. Feels good to be back. Feels good to be back here behind the desk. As some of you might know, I just got back from Texas, as indicated by my cowboy hat, which has not left my head in about a week now, except when I'm exercising, sleeping, or showering. But yeah, that was epic. Truly a time and a half. Plus, I just shaved with a bad razor, so now I'm all cut up, which is epic. But it's okay. Nothing can get you down when you're wearing a cowboy hat. It is the antidote
I don't believe you actually need to shave, Doyle.
to misfortune. I'll tell you that much right now. And I've never been to Texas before, but it's much different than where I'm from and also other states that I've been to. And that, along with the news cycle, is kind of what inspired me to want to talk about this today. And this isn't really a new trend. People have long been moving from California to Texas, but there's been a spike recently of about 36%, which is pretty significant. So I figured that we'd talk about who's moving to Texas, why they're moving there, why moving to Texas is epic, why Texas is epic, and how to keep Texas epic going forward. Because as it would turn out, and as I've been saying on this channel since the very beginning, it is very possible that Texas could go blue by 2030. And when that happens, it's wraps. So we'll get into that, but I think that Joe Rogan was the first to come out and say that he's thinking about moving to Texas. And of course, people moving from California to Texas is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for many years. Tens of thousands of people moving from California to Texas. But as we mentioned, it has increased in recent years, and it could very well.
Is there some, like, epidemic of people moving specifically from California to Texas? Because I assume people move out of California all the time. A lot of people move into California, but okay.
Will continue to increase because of California's general deterioration, but also specifically the way that they've been handling coronavirus. Like, they won't let surfers
Deterioration. Why not just say what you're thinking? Degeneracy. We know you're thinking it, Doyle.
go into the water. They're saying that Los Angeles can never be open until there's a cure for coronavirus. They're giving free drugs and hotel rooms to homeless people. I don't remember that particular provision of the social contract, but I'm just a dumb YouTube man, so I guess that makes sense. But
yeah, by doing this, they're making sure that homeless people aren't on the streets potentially catching coronavirus and worse, spreading it. And by providing them with the drugs, it means that they'll stay in the fucking hotel room, like, in quarantine. Like, this is all about trying to keep as many people from getting the virus as possible. But of course, anytime you give drugs to anyone, you're doing something bad in Doyle's view, so, of course.
You're all familiar with what they're doing. Many of you are actually living under it in California. I'm in Michigan, so I'm living under Comrade Whitmer, who might be Joe Biden's VP pick, but that's why Joe Rogan was talking about moving. It's like, he does stand-up comedy, and if they won't let him use the Comedy Store for another 2 years, what's the point of even being there? That, in addition to how terrible California is in general.
Oh no, he'll only have the largest podcast on the fucking internet. Whatever will Joe Rogan do for his income? It's not like he couldn't do stand-up on live stream or something. I mean, I understand that a big part of stand-up comedy is feeding off the energy of the room. Yeah, that's true, leftist. Doyle doesn't consider homeless to be people. True. A big part of stand-up comedy is the energy of the live audience, of getting to feed directly off of their response and that kind of thing, which is not something you can get in a streamed venue. But it's not like Rogan is hurting for money. Now, granted, there are a lot of comics who the quarantine is hurting hard because they don't have the biggest podcast on the internet to fall back on. They don't have these revenue streams. They don't have millions in the bank from a lucrative television career and said podcast. So I understand that this is hitting comics hard. But one of the interesting things I've seen, at least on Twitter, is a lot of comics are just kind of trying to roll with it. Like, maybe it's because the best comics are pretty progressive and left-leaning, so they understand why they can't, why it's a good idea to isolate and quarantine people. But a lot of them are just like, yeah, it sucks. I'm trying to figure something else out, but, you know, my livelihood is not worth people dying for, which is essentially what Musk and Rogan are saying here by complaining about things not being opened back up.
And if you're from California, this isn't to disparage your state. It's truly magnificent. Like, it's a thing of beauty. I love the concept of vacationing there, but the problem is that the dominant strain of your politics is cancerous and awful, which is unfortunately running off into the quality of your state. Remember when California was red in virtually every presidential election for like 4 decades, from 1952 until 1992, except for when Lyndon Johnson won in a landslide? I remember that.
No, you don't. Were you even alive in 1992? Are you kidding? You don't remember shit, Doyle. And yeah, it's gotten more liberal. And, you know, the strain of liberalism which California embraces is not really a good one. It's that kind of neoliberal, as much as I kind of hate this term nanny state idea, it's certainly better than the politics of fucking Texas. Although they are getting more and more blue, so that may change. Doyle is still a zygote. Ben Glebe started an online comedy group and said he'll probably keep doing it afterwards since it's easier than traveling everywhere. The whole world will just be different after COVID. Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, I can definitely see someone setting up a live stream session where you have, you know, maybe a handful of people who are there, like in some sort of better than Zoom call, and just, you know, reading the Twitch chat, maybe having someone read off funny comments or heckles or whatever, you know, to give them that energy. But yeah, I can totally see comedians adapting to streaming their audience. It also means that they can reach a wider audience, people who can't go to the big clubs. Like, I would love to go to you know, some of the big comedy clubs, but I live nowhere near any good comedy clubs, or I don't think there's even any comedy clubs left in my town. But I would totally be down to go to, you know, a stream of one. That'd be fucking dope.
More on that later, but in addition to the coronavirus response, California has the highest cost of living of any major state in the country. The only places higher like DC and Hawaii. They have the 11th highest taxes in the country. It's one of the most regulated states in the country as of...
Their cost of living is high for a variety of reasons, but because a lot of people want to live in California. There's a lot of very lucrative industries in California. And also, it's on the West Coast, so a lot of Chinese businessmen buy property in California. This is also why Washington, and particularly the Seattle area, has such high cost of living, uh, mostly subsumed by rent, because foreign business people, mostly Chinese, will buy property there and then just sit on it. They won't rent it out, they won't sell it, they won't let other people use it, so that it accrues in value. That's why that is. You know, if we eliminated rents and land ownership, then the cost of living would fall tremendously in these places.
2019, their code of restrictions contained hundreds of thousands of regulations across like every industry imaginable. This doesn't even begin to touch their gun laws. And it's also the 11th least friendly state in the country. And it's like, why does anyone even want to live there in the first place? As far as I can tell, it's because the weather is nice and the girls there are like illegally hot. But I own a poncho and women are annoying, so that's not all that compelling to me. But you compare this to Texas. They have like...
What do you bet Doyle's deep, deep in the closet? Like, I know he's a pretty big red pillar and does a lot of MRA shit. So I wonder if he's just so deep in the closet that it just terrifies him to even confront it. I'm not saying he's bad because he's gay or any dumb shit like that. I'm just saying comments like that, and you know, it's just wondering.
Like the 18th lowest cost of living in the country, also the 18th lowest taxes in the country, and that's also pretty heavily regulated, but significantly less than California. California has like 395,000 restrictions. Texas has like 227,000. Still quite a lot, but the difference is that Texas has a relatively greater presence of industries that are typically heavily regulated, like things pertaining to...
Yeah, you're in the Midwest, Doyle. We have some of the lowest cost of living around. Because no one wants to fucking live here.
The environment and health, etc. But they're also in the top 10 states for gun rights, and they're also ranked like number 4 for the friendliest state. Oh, well, but California has the best weather. Yeah, Texas has the 3rd best weather, and guess what else? The girls are Catholic. We're all gonna make it. No e-girls in Texas. I don't want to hear, well, John, if you look at the religious affiliation by state, the data actually show that I don't care. California breeds thottery. Texas breeds families. No slightly above average looking girl with a poor relationship with her father ever said that she's going to move to Texas to pursue being a thought full time. It's always California. I cannot be moved on this. But that's exactly why Elon...
Yeah, because in California, there's like every street corner has a modeling agency of various repute and oh god, what's the word I'm looking for here? You know what I'm talking about. That they have modeling agencies. So if you want to make a living with your body, California's where to go. And women and men should have that right. But Doyle doesn't see it as a right. He sees it as degeneracy. Women, I want to live here? Well, I always knew you were crazy, Dodge.
Elon Musk is talking about moving Tesla to Texas as well. Like, California is not friendly to business, nor is it friendly to people, whereas Texas is, as we've discussed. Same thing with Dave Rubin from the Rubin Report. He's talked about it. My friend Elijah Schaefer, aka Slightly Offensive, he intends on moving to Texas.
You know, I wonder if one of the big reasons why Texas is, or why California is so has so many industries outside of Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood is just one of the biggest industries. It's not the only one there. It's because it's a fucking coast state. Especially since so much of our manufacturing is done in like China and Taiwan. It's a lot cheaper to load a cargo ship with whatever you're manufacturing and ship it across the Pacific Ocean from China to California than to fly it to Texas or fly it to someplace in Europe and ship it across the Atlantic Ocean to Texas. You know, that's just one logical thing I just thought of. I don't have any data, obviously, but that just seems logical to me. Also, that Texas has a high population of Catholics because of Hispanic immigrants who Doyle wants to keep out of the country. True! Yeah, a lot of Hispanic immigrants are Catholic. That's why there's an overwhelming Catholic population. If you succeed in getting rid of the Mexican immigrants, then won't be so many Catholics.
And it's because people are tired of it. The house of cards is collapsing. California is deteriorating and people are leaving. Texas is basically just what I'd imagine California used to be.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let's see. California's population grew by 7.3% from 2010 to the end of 2019. This is slightly higher than the national rate of 6.3%. Doesn't seem like people are fleeing. It just seems like natural churn, and more people are going to live in California or being born in California than, on average, any other state in the union. So your idea that people are fleeing California is not borne out in the data, Doyle. I mean, I'm not denying that people are leaving California, but it's not this mass abandoned ship. It's just some people don't like it. Some people don't like the weather. They don't like the illegally hot women. You know? Some people like Dodge apparently like summers that are way too hot and winters that are way too cold.
To be like. And that's actually a pretty chilling prophecy because it implies that Texas could go the way of California. And what do we do then? Like, Texas is like the Second Amendment of states because it's like, well, if all else fails, I'll just move to Texas. Well, like, what happens if Texas follows California? The two states are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Like, for example, demographics in California and Texas are pretty similar, but Texas has a much lower poverty rate for all demographics than does California because the system in Texas doesn't create obstacles for success, nor does it punish success. And that's fantastic, but the question becomes, can we sustain that environment? Because on the one hand, we can look at it and say, wow, people are leaving California. They're moving to Texas. They're waking up. The liberal experiment has failed. USA. Yeah, but on the other hand, it's like, oh.
Let me check Texas population growth. So, according to the 2010 census, Texas has a total population of 20. Wow. So from 2000 to 2010, they grew by 27%. I wonder how much of that was immigration. Let's see. This is from 2012. So, well, as of this December 2019. So, again, a lot of people are going to Texas too. But, you know, I wonder how much of that is immigration, how much of that is people going to places like Austin and San Antonio, you know, these liberal hubs. You know, just okay. Yeah, so actually Texas does appear to be leading in population growth. So a lot of people are going to Texas. So, yeah. That's part of the reason why it's turning blue, Doyle.
Oh, wait a minute.
You know, now that you mention it, one of the biggest reasons I like the Midwest is the cost of living. Take that out of the equation, I wouldn't really care as much about staying here. Yeah, exactly. Reason for high amounts of homelessness in California is due to Reagan closing down mental health facilities. Yeah, I did. I knew about that, yeah. When Reagan was governor of California, he shut down all the mental health facilities. And what do people who have to live in a mental health facility do when the facility closes down? Well, they certainly don't get a job and get a home of their own. They end up on the streets. So, and also, there are a lot of places in California where, as cold and callous as this may sound, the weather doesn't kill the homeless people. Here in Iowa, we have a Salvation Army adult rehabilitation center in my city. And I worked for the secondhand shop off of the ARC. And one of the things that the people who were in the ARC talked about was how when it got into the warmer months, you know, April, May, June, a lot of people would just leave and not come back, whether they were actually clean or not. And then a number of people would, around October, November would come back because they could live, in the park or in an alley or something around here during the summer months because the weather's not going to kill them. But when it gets down to freezing or below, you can't really survive outside, so they need a warm place to stay. You don't have that problem in a lot of California. In a lot of California, it stays nice and temperate at the lowest all year round. So that is another reason why they have a lot of homeless problems, are because they don't need the infrastructure to deal with homeless people because homeless people don't die to exposure as often. Exactly. I work in healthcare analytics, and that's a thing. Homelessness is worse in states like Arizona and Nevada. And in the Hudson Valley, we have apple orchards and dairy farms. Yep.
And okay, now they're coming to Texas and they're voting for the same policies that ruined their home state. And this is happening for a few reasons. Firstly, it's because you've got people who can't afford to live in places like California or even New York. And so they're forced to move to a place like Texas with a substantially lower cost of living. But it's not like that's going to force their values to shift. They just say, well, it's capitalism's fault. There weren't enough price controls on housing.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. But is the cost of living that much lower in Texas? I mean, I would believe it's lower, but... Okay, so cost of living in Texas, it's lower than average. Okay. Wow. That is surprising to me. Let me see how this compares in California. So health costs is significantly cheaper in California than Texas. Obviously, housing is way higher, 3 times as much. And median home costs, but utilities are cheaper in Texas. So yeah, it definitely does seem like it really depends on what you're looking at for cost of living. But overall, yeah, the cost of living is cheaper in Texas. But if you're just trying to move to a lower cost of living areas, there are much, much better places to move than Texas. So trying to say that people are moving because of the cost of living is ignoring many other factors.
And then in addition to that, you've got the same case for families who can't afford to raise children in these areas, or perhaps that...
True! Sowing, yes, everyone is moving to Texas. Reaping, no! Why is Texas turning blue? Yeah, exactly.
Don't even want to because they tend to be pretty toxic, and so they're relocating. And then on top of that, you've got immigrants coming in to Texas who primarily vote for Democrats. And you can read about this in any major publication. LA Times writes about this, Politico writes about this. This is not some theory, some fringe theory, like within the realm of what is referred to as political science.
In the same vein, sowing, all these immigrants need to go home. They don't belong in America. They're not Americans. They don't need to. Reaping, why won't any immigrants vote for Republicans?
This is just true and completely uncontroversial. I'm sick of people walking on eggshells when discussing this topic. The Democrats discuss it quite often. In fact, they celebrate it because it's their strategy. It's their ace in the hole. Weaponized immigration. The Democrats mock Republicans by saying, well, you can't get minorities to vote for you. To which the obvious reply would be, you couldn't even get Americans to vote for you, so you had to start importing voters. And that would be fine if we were bringing in immigrants who love America. They love our history. They love our Constitution. And while many of them do, unfortunately, they largely don't because they don't have to. And that's because Democrats have declared it offensive to ask non-Americans to assimilate to American culture. They ask, well...
Oh boy, nice dog whistle, Doyle. Because when we say, when liberals, when leftists, when blue people say we want immigrants to assimilate, what we mean is that we want them to become a part of the great melting pot of America. We don't want them to necessarily change their cultures or their beliefs or their attitudes. We just want them to, it's not assimilation, it's integration is what we seek. Where they still maintain their own distinct cultural personality, if that's what they want, but that gets integrated into American life. After all, Doyle, you know where that cowboy hat came from? Mexican cowboys. Yeah, it was fucking Mexicans and Hispanic people from way back in the day who started wearing those, and they caught on with people who want to pretend like they're John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. So that is what we mean by integration. When you say assimilation, you want them all to be white. You want the immigrants to come in to throw away their culture, throw away their traditions, throw away all those things, and become white. And while yes, I'm not going to lie, there are some things that immigrants bring that could be harmful. There's a lot more that they bring that is helpful. What is American culture? American culture is Chinese food, Italian pizza and pasta, black music, and I mean, America is a melting pot, a confluence of so many different attitudes and cultures and traditions. To say that it's that American culture is any one homogenous thing is completely ignorant of what actually makes up America. Red states tend to have lower cost of living, but have fuck all for social safety nets. Yeah, exactly. Funny thing is, there are plenty of conservative immigrants. It's just that Republicans are super racist and xenophobic. Also, Doyle is an Irish name. I wonder how he would have liked 19th century American xenophobia. Yeah, exactly.
What even is American culture? Great question. How about we start with the
Awesome. I'm glad he's going to answer this. Let's see how wrong he is.
Constitution. Let's just start with the Constitution before we even get into picket fences and apple pies, because the Democrats don't even agree with us on the Constitution anymore. Constitution isn't a radical partisan document. It was debated. It became the agreed upon framework. That's our frame of reference. We can debate everything else, but the Constitution is not up for debate. That's the whole point. And that's why liberalism doesn't work. The philosophy of liberalism seeks to liberate the individual from any and all.
Wow. I didn't realize he'd gone quite that full mask off. Just liberalism doesn't work. Of course, I'm sure he thinks he's referring to like West Coast liberal or New York liberalism, and not just the idea of liberalism that the U.S. Constitution was based off of.
All constraints. And when taken to its logical conclusion, that means to have a shared culture or language or religion or idea of what gender is or set of values. Well, that would be wrong and offensive. And that's where we're at right now. And that begs the question of, if we can't have anything in common, what are we doing here? What's the point? Are we just holding hands? Like, if the only thing that we have in common is that we all agree that we should have nothing in common, if that's what makes us a country, then we will not make it to 2100. It's like if your parents are arguing about
what we have in common is that we are all part of this wonderfully varied tapestry that is America. I mean, the thing that really bothers me about this is how it ignores the difference that white people in different areas of America, how their culture differs. I mean, the differences between white people in Michigan and white people in Texas and white people in Alabama and white people in Seattle are vastly different. They're more different than the differences between white people in Texas and Hispanic people in Texas, or Latinx people. Like, you're completely ignoring the way that we are all different, even if we share the same skin pigmentation, because you don't like the skin pigmentation that everyone else has. That's the issue, Doyle. Yeah, exactly. What do we have in common? We're human.
what kind of carpet to get, and then you chime in with your opinion, and it's like, hey, it's great that you have an opinion, but you just got here, and it's not your house. Or maybe dad wants to get a new couch, and mom wants to collapse the foundations of the house just to see what the hell happens, and dad is like, honey, please don't do that. So then mom is like, hey, kids, you can have a say in this too, and remember, if mommy gets her way, I'm going to give you free candy out of dad's paycheck. And then dad's like, hey, mom, that's not fair. She's like, yeah, I don't care. That's literally the situation that we're in right now. And we're not playing horse. We're not playing like tic-tac-toe, right? Like where if we lose, it's okay. It's not exactly consequential. No, this is if we lose, they criminalize our speech and they try to take our guns away and they continue to destroy the prospects of the American family by sending jobs overseas while simultaneously regulating small business into the ground and taxing whatever's left so that they can try to finance social services for illegal aliens. And if that can't pick up the tab, no worries. They don't mind making your children and your grandchildren into debt slaves. And that's really what's at stake here with like this whole thing.
You got it right, Doyle. The way that our economy enslaves young people into constant wage slavery is abhorrent. Seize the means, comrades. Like, the biggest issue in America today is that, particularly among Republicans, they don't want to spend money to make sure that future generations will have the advantages they have, or they had. We see this, an excellent example is the way that the education system was gutted and deregulated to the point where the generation who crows about being able to go to school after working a part-time summer job and getting a full, reputable, good college degree, they completely gutted the education industry so that now we have to go hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to get a degree that we can't even use. I've lost track of the number of people I've met with good, reputable college degrees that they can't use or burned out of the industry and won't use. I knew a woman, she's retired, she may be dead now. She had an archaeology degree. You know what she was doing? She was a waitress at a restaurant here in town. Excellent waitress, wonderful restaurant. It was like, she made good money doing it. I'm not saying she was struggling or anything. This was 15 years ago. But she wasn't using her degree. Now, I don't know her whole story. I don't know why she wasn't using it, but that's what we're living in. We have people waiting tables, working in call centers with degrees that have nothing to do with those jobs. And it's not because we're lazy. It's not because kids today don't respect things or whatever excuse you tell yourself. It's because we have to go thousands in debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to get those degrees. And then in order to get a job in those industries for entry-level positions, they want 3 to 5 years of experience. So why do you think it's a bad thing? Like, every successful society in history, including America up until the last 20 or 30 years, has understood that each generation essentially pays the debt of the next one. Like, you pay in and do things so that the next generation is a little bit better than you were. Something went wrong in the minds of the baby boomers, and they decided that the next generation is not going to be better than us. In fact, they're going to be worse. My degree is just that, a degree. That's all I use it for, to check the bachelor's box on applications. I got a degree in a dying profession because I was young and dumb. Part of the problem is that it's hard to see when an industry is dying until it actually is dead sometimes.
The question of American politics in this decade is the question of, do you want your children to have a better life than you did? Do you want your children to have more opportunities than you did? And are you willing to make sacrifices in order to achieve that? Or are you more comfortable watching superhero movies, eating fast food every day, and lusting after women on the internet than to be proactive in combating the threat that this country faces? Because we still have a window. And I would like to say that it's about the...
Jeez, I hate this fucking rhetoric. Do you want to work for it, or are you just going to sit on your lazy ass? Bitch, we work harder than any generation in the last century. Since they outlawed child slavery. Or child labor, rather. But our hard work doesn't go as far as it did in our parents' or grandparents' generation. Just because you lucked into a cushy grifting job at 19 doesn't mean that everyone else has the same luck that you did.
the size of 12 years. Like, consider the fact that throughout history, nations have risen and they have fallen, and consider that those people in those nations probably viewed their status as the natural state of the world. And maybe you're rolling your eyes at this, you think this is just politics as usual, you think that both sides are equally bad. That's fine. I'm not asking you to listen to me. All I'm asking you to do is just remember that you heard this before it happened. Not just from me, many other people in conservative media have been talking about.
So this is an issue I've actually seen a lot in leftist spaces, particularly. This idea that the Republicans are bad, but so are the Democrats. And while I will acknowledge that many of the elected officials in the Democratic Party are pretty shit, they still have a lot better ideas and goals than the Republicans. And unfortunately, the society, the system we live in only works when we have only works with either Republicans or Democrats. We don't have a way to break in another party, not with first past the post voting. And you know what? One party is completely uninterested in changing that, and the other party has at least said they're open to the idea of changing that. In fact, Maine, for the general election in November, is going to have ranked choice voting for the first time ever. That means that in Maine, there will be a greater chance for more third-party candidates to get seats in Congress and to get further in more local elections. That is huge. We can spread that to more states or get more states to abide by the popular vote compact, then we can really make some changes here. But when I see leftists, when I see people who want to make these changes saying that, oh, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, I realize how ineffectual some of these people are. And it really hurts. Because if you want to make changes, you have to work within the system. Because right now, if we took to the streets, all the leftists, all the socialists, all the anarchists, if we took to the streets, we'd get put down in a day. Or we would be co-opted by people like Caleb Maupin and end up in an authoritarian state that's even worse than what we enjoy now. Now, I recognize that many of the changes we want will not come through electoralism. But we can make it easier for us to affect those changes and maybe make it a little less bloody and maybe get more people on our side when it does get to that point.
About this, and if you listened, that would be great, but at the very least, just remember that you were told about it so that one of us gets to say, I told you so. But the difference is that your I told you so means that I've lost some credibility, and my I told you so means that we've lost our country. Howdy there, folks. Stay this much right now.
God, what a cringy fucking accent. Because everything about Doyle is fucking cringy. What am I saying? Yeah, part of the problem is colleges are for-profit, so they don't care about telling you, hey, this is a dying profession. Nope, they already got your money. What do they care? Boy, Doyle, you are just a shit. Doyle is my dad. I'm sorry to hear that, Catch My Load. That is really unfortunate. Also, that would make you about 3, so I think you're a little too young to be on Twitch. So, make sure you have your parents' permission. Yeah, Doyle, just stop. Like, you've gone full mask off. It's obvious that you want some sort of fascist government here. Just stop. It's not funny. It's not entertaining. Just stop, dude. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.